Welcome to Studio 5. We've got a great show in store for you. A little laughter, a little hip-hop, and even a little archaeology. We begin with this week's countdown, though, of the top 5 stories in the world of uplifting entertainment. Here are the first 2. At number 5.
The Gospel Music Association launches into the 54th Annual Dove Awards.
Let's head now to the 54th Annual Dove Awards that honors some of the biggest artists in Christian music. We hit the red carpet to talk with a few of these artists, including one of the most nominated singers this year, Katie Nicole, who walked away with New Artist of the Year honors.
It doesn't take a trophy for me to see what God has done through the music, and I'm just grateful that I have gotten to see that impact.
At number 4.
Oh, darling, you're gonna be alright, 'cause the stars will keep on shining through the darkest night.
It's more from this year's Dove Awards. The night also featured performances from big-name artists like Lauren Daigle, who performed her new single, Be Okay, and gave a heartfelt message of hope for Israel.
In light of what has happened in Israel this week, I think our eyes need to be open to what he might be calling us to.
Well, now that the countdown has begun, stay tuned for the remaining 3 stories. They're coming up in just a few moments. We turn now to our sit-down. Tommy Woodard and Eddie James, known to their fans and followers as simply the Skit Guys. They've got a unique ability to use humor to teach God's Word, and it is a successful formula. They started it more than 20 years ago.
No, sir. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. I'm the teacher. No, Snow. I'm the T-Snow. Here we go. Here we go.
Take me back to the beginning. You guys have been the Skit Guys and doing this now for how long?
As Skit Guys, 26 years.
26 years.
Yeah.
Did you think it would last this long?
No. There was no thought of longevity. It was just let's have fun.
Okay, no. You listen to me.
Being in our 50s now and looking back, I can remember, we talked about this a lot, there was a time starting out where we did one of our first gigs, and it was in a garage in a youth minister's house with 12 kids.
Yeah.
And we arrived thinking we're going to do our skits, and and then the youth pastor's going right in here, and we're like, in this garage,
Your garage,
in the middle of the summer,
next to your car.
So what is the formula for your success in making people laugh if you have one? How do you do it?
We call them the 3 H's: humor, heart, hymn. Humor, heart, hymn. Laughter breaks down walls for truth to enter. So we're always trying to figure out, well, how do we make people laugh? The heart really is reading your mail, like I'm watching you, I'm listening, and then like, oh my, they just, I've been thinking what they just said on stage or in that video, and then always pointing to God. Humor, heart, hymn. That's the secret recipe.
When did you know you were funny?
My parents will tell you that when I was like this baby, like on their shoulder, people will be laughing behind them, and they'd be like, "What's up?" And they're like, "Your kid's making faces at us," So I think it's just who I am. I think so.
The very first skit I ever did was we had to take like food or something and make a skit out of it. And so I chose Mr. Rogers doing Macho Cologne. It was an advertisement. And so however that morphed into my brain, Mr. Rogers doing Macho Cologne. And the kids, my peers were laughing, and I was like, that was maybe the first taste of going, okay, that was pretty monumental, yeah.
Is this the career you envisioned for yourself?
That's such a great question. I don't even know. Like I graduated a year before Eddie, and I went on a mission trip the week after my senior year. And it was the first time that I used my gifts and talents for God. And this little old lady grabbed my hands, little church in Mississippi, and she said, "The Holy Spirit spoke to me through what you did tonight." I'd never heard anything like that, And people talk about a calling. I don't know if I'm called to this, but I know I've been chasing that moment ever since then, that the Holy Spirit would use me,
We started doing videos for churches, and before you know it, churches have screens and they're showing things, and and then faith-based movies come out, and then you're like, there's really no comedies, there's a lot of dramas, like every week we're putting out videos for churches that make people laugh. Maybe we could do that. But the calling to be a minister has always been first. So to figure that out, how, you know, just what you said, to figure that out, go, can all these worlds collide? I don't know. But it's been beautiful to watch it.
Tell me when you recognize the impact of what you do. We all love to laugh, but your work goes deeper than that. When did you see the impact?
There have been a handful of times that I can remember when the world was shut down 5 nights a week. We were doing skits and families were gathering together and watching them. And that was, you go, oh, thanks God, again, thanks.
And we would, every day, especially during that time, you just get an influx of emails. And so part of the morning, you know, because you're just in this, what's gonna happen, the fear, the triggers, all the things, and you just read these emails. You know, there was a policeman that said, my wife has passed away, I have 3 boys, and I still have to go out at night to you know, purvey and look, but he goes, I know they're going to be okay for a little bit because they're watching bedtime Bible stories and they're watching your videos, and you all are helping me. I mean, like, there's just beautiful things like that. And it's just, wow.
Throughout the years, we get lots of email of how God has used it, and we don't fool ourselves in thinking we came up with something great. Like, we know God takes it and uses it.
A compass points you to true north. And once you got true north, you can never get lost. I'm your pastor. But it's not my job or the church's job to lead your family. It's yours. See, life can pull you in many different directions if you let it. But real talk, it's pretty easy to get lost if you don't have a guide.
Well, the Skit guys are on tour right now. You can find out where they'll be coming next and hopefully to a city near you at their website, skitguys.com.
Still ahead. It's the music of rapper Zonti. He shares his story and mission to give Gen Zs a sound they want with a message they need.
And I'd always been passionate about music, so I was like, okay, if I'm responsible to represent what I believe, what better way to bring it to my generation than make music that they want with the message that they need.
At number 3. It's beginning to sound a lot like Christmas.
Cher is topping the charts with holiday music. Her first ever holiday album, titled Christmas, debuts at #1 on Billboard's Top Holiday Albums chart, the first holiday chart of the year. It's filled with covers and new instant classics. It also broke into the top 40 of the Billboard 200 album chart. It debuts at number 32, Cher's 14th top 40 album. She's now just the 4th artist to have a top 40 hit in every decade since the 60s, joining Barbra Streisand, Bob Dylan, and the Rolling Stones.
At number 2.
I think the near-death experience is where science meets religion.
Angel Studios' documentary After Death opens at number 4 at the box office.
What I've tried to do is put data out there that's been scientifically, rigorously collected.
After Death is a powerful documentary with people who have near-death stories to share.
What inspired the journey to create this?
So for me, it was born out of loss. So my brother-in-law, Marco, he was killed in a car wreck in 2012. And that kind of caused me to ask questions about, what happens after we die.
The first thing that happens is called an out-of-body experience. And they come to a place of exquisite beauty.
They very commonly see a light. Deceased relatives come to meet them. The first person I saw was my grandfather.
Welcome back. That is going to leave us with just one more story to share in this week's countdown. We'll get to it in just a little bit. Right now, we want to turn to Zonti. He's a 24-year-old recording artist from Florida who now calls Nashville home. And he's blazing through the hip-hop world with rich lyrics that advance the gospel.
When they ask me how I did it, I say God taught me. When they ask me how I'm winning, I say God taught me. When they ask me why I'm different, I say God taught me. This my time to get it. God taught me.
Tell me
me about your music journey. What is it that inspired you to pursue not just a music career, but a career in hip-hop music?
Yeah. When I was 16 years old, I wrote a mission statement. I want to make music people want with the message that they need. And I'd always been passionate about music, so I was like, okay, if I'm responsible to represent what I believe, what better way to bring it to my generation than make music that they want.
See me on the way when I walk like this, sauce like this, I'm a boss I guess, God knows I'm blessed. Go to the bank and I cash that check, guess what's next?
Who have been your influences?
One of the main things that inspired me to like stay committed to figuring out my sound as an artist is because I don't know, there wasn't anything exactly like what I wanted to hear. You know, there wasn't anything that represented God, but that had the sound that I found myself drawn towards. So I kind of like decided, you know what, I feel called to trailblaze and be my own inspiration, be an inspiration for younger me. Like, who would he have been looking for? What kind of music would have helped him avoid some of the stuff he had to walk through? So, of course, there's so many influences, and I can't name them all, but I say right now, I'm trying my best to be the influence that younger me would have needed.
I like that. I like that. That said, your debut single was God Taught Me. It received a lot of attention. What's the story behind that song? Where did it come from?
I had a New Year's show, and it was this big deal for me. I was so excited. It was my first, like, real concert. I was nervous. I was preparing. I could not wait to go perform in front of about 7 people. And I was like, I knew I was going to drive 3 hours to Orlando and do this New Year's show. And I was like, I need a closing song. I need something that's gonna get their attention. And I had writer's block. I couldn't think of anything, so I was stuck for a good 2-3 weeks, and I knew the show was coming up. And I remember I went out to the back of my house and like looked up at the stars, and this sounds dramatic, but this is exactly how it happened. I was just like, God, I surrender. I give this to you. You called me to do this music stuff, so I trust you. And then that night I went to sleep. I woke up at 3:34 a.m. with the melody in my head. Next day, wrote the song, recorded it, made the beat, mixed it in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it was done. And then that was the first one that I put out, and 11 million views later, that kind of started everything. But that's why I keep telling people, just start. If God gives you a calling, don't wait to figure it out. Don't try to be perfect. You're responsible with what he's calling you to execute on. And if you don't take that chance, then he'll have to use somebody else, but he wants to use you. But if God has a plan, it's going to fall into place.
As a musician yourself and people watching who want to break through that noise and connect their Christian faith with other people, what advice would you give them? How do you go about making that connection?
Authenticity. They respect you if you're actually living it. That's been my biggest door opener in any situation. I think the biggest thing, the common denominator that I've seen from people who don't want to follow God or think that that's not for them is because they've been hurt by somebody who claimed to represent it. You know, whether that was a pastor or whether it was a parent. And I don't know, I think that that's what's going to open the doors if you want to be that light. I tell everybody every time I hold a microphone, you have stories only you can tell and gifts only you can give. And your survival is proof to someone else that they can make it. And so it's our responsibility to wake up and live on purpose. And I think no matter what our platform is, even if it's just around our family and friends, that's empowering because it gives us a sense of responsibility. Like, hey, them just watching how I live, if I preach the gospel at all times and when necessary use words, that alone could be enough.
Zonti begins a 12-city tour November 2nd. Go to zonti.com to find out if you'll be in a city near you. We need to take a quick break, but before we do, this is a great time to squeeze in just one more story. It's this week's Story in Pictures. Here's your Studio 5 snapshot.
We honor and celebrate the life of actor Matthew Perry. The Emmy-nominated star is remembered most for his 10 seasons on Friends as Chandler. He was one of Hollywood's most recognizable actors, starring opposite Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Matt LeBlanc, Lisa Kudrow, and David Schwimmer. Emergency responders responded to his home and found him unconscious in a jacuzzi Saturday. He is dead at age 54. This brief look at his life in pictures is this week's Studio 5 snapshot. Coming up.
Well, it's not a surprise, of course, to read that there's violence in Israel and Palestine is unfortunately a common event.
Author and journalist Andrew Lawler talks all things Jerusalem. With the current conflict in the Middle East, his new book is timely, and a recent National Geographic article as well.
Welcome back to Studio 5. Author and journalist Andrew Lawler has written countless newspaper articles and magazine articles, including some for the New York Times and National Geographic. He's also the author of a new and timely book. It's called Under Jerusalem. I sat down with him to talk about that book and his article, Under the Dome, which shines a light on the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. What's buried under the most contested city in the world?
Well, Jerusalem is an unusual place, not just because it's the home of 3 monotheisms, but also because Jerusalem is unusual in its geology. So underneath Jerusalem are caves and fissures that have been hollowed out by water. It's all limestone beneath. And over the centuries and millennium, people have taken that rock that's beneath, cut it up, taken it upstairs, and turned it into the Jerusalem that we see today. So as a result, Jerusalem underground is a very rich and varied place full of cisterns and caves and all kinds of ancient halls and homes that have been covered over the centuries and millennia.
Have you been able to get down and see much of that?
Oh yes, although I don't think anybody has been into all of the underground spaces in Jerusalem. There are so many that are tourist sites that people can go and visit, such as at the City of David National Park. But there are also places in the old city, underneath Arab shops, underneath Jewish homes, where you can go below and find amazing remains that date back thousands of years.
Take me inside the National Geographic cover story. What inspired that and what's been the response?
Let's start with the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is like a rectangular box, and for at least 3,000 years, people have been worshiping there. So it's a very sacred place. And I was interested in the history of this place, and particularly the one most famous building that sits on top of it today, and that is the Dome of the Rock. It's sacred to Jews and Christians and Muslims. They all have different stories about what happened there, and we don't really know for sure. But we do know that it's a place that people have imbued with meaning for many, many centuries. And we managed to get permission for myself and our photographer to go inside, to go up on the roof, to go in the rafters, to go anywhere we wanted, even on the rock itself, in order to explore more about this very important 1,400-year-old building. So I think it's an opportunity for people to be able to see that which you can't see as a tourist, to see the interior, which is an incredibly rich place with these enormous marble columns, gilt, and some of the most amazing collections of ancient mosaics in the ancient world. And most of it's still intact. It's really a miracle that in a place like Jerusalem that has seen so much violence and invasions and difficulties, that this building still remains.
How has this work changed you?
It's a great question. I've come to see Jerusalem as this amazing combination of cultures and traditions and religious innovations and religious events that have created a unique place that you can't find anywhere else in the world. And a place like the Temple Mount is magical because it is a combination of all of these peoples coming together over 3,000 years to create something that is beautiful, to create something that is rich, to create something that has deep meaning. So for me, that gives me some hope that Jerusalem one day, maybe someday, could be the place of peace that so many of us wish it could be.
Andrew's newest book, Under Jerusalem, is available wherever you purchase your reading material. We need to take another quick break, but we've also now made it to the final headline in this week's countdown of the best in uplifting entertainment news. Here's what's finishing on top.
At number 1, a Studio 5 first look at one of the most anticipated Netflix releases of the year.
Before I begin my broadcast today, I have something to say. In this time of darkness, of invading cities, I'm trying to remember. Light lasts forever.
All the Light We Cannot See is a series adapted from the 2014 Pulitzer Prize-winning book.
Darkness lasts not even for 1 second. When you turn on the light.
Where did you first come to this story? We know it's a book, now a series, thanks to the two of you. Where did you first come to this story?
Well, I think one thing that we're both lucky about is we both read this book long before we were thinking about it as a show or a movie. So we both read, I mean, Steve and I had never met, but like me, Steve read the book as a reader, and he loved the book years before we would get a chance at collaborating and turning it into a show. So I just fell in love with it as a suspenseful page turner.
The novel turned series features a blind French teenager and a German soldier whose paths collide in occupied France as both try to survive the devastation of World War II.
I know that broadcasting could get me executed. But I will not be silenced. I hope you will tune in again tomorrow.
It begins streaming this week.
I know this is a work of fiction, but what do you think this says about the reality of what happened in our history?
I think that it reflects on the experiences of people who are the victims of war. So it's not about strategy. It's not about how the battles were waged. It's about how people who are stuck in those battles fared and how ordinary people became extraordinary people as a consequence.
Someone from our generation who thought if you talk reason, then maybe the insanity of this war might come to an end.
Well, you're back with us in Studio 5. You know, music helps us to bring this show to you every single week, and this week's soundtrack comes from One House Music. Take a listen. You're going to hear why I'd Be Lying is what's playing in my ear this week.
Feels like I'm fighting myself every day. I'm in a tug of war, on and I want this saga to break. But there are some things that can only be broken when my heart is finally ready to say. I fall on my knees in worship. God has set things in motion. I desire a life of devotion. No, I won't fear a thing in the ocean. I look up to the sky. I know my help comes only from you, Lord. You know me more than I know myself. You are the one who I adore. I'd be lying if I said I don't need your love.
On that musical note, we are just about out of time for this week's edition of Studio 5. So let's look ahead and see what's coming up on next week's Rundown.
Studio 5 sits down with Los Angeles Chargers running back Joshua Kelly.
I love football. I understand that my purpose is bigger than a contract. My purpose is bigger than a touchdown. It's to inspire people and do my best on this platform. This is who I am. This is my identity, is I'm in Christ. And my family members, my wife, they all remind me, regardless how things go, you go out there and ball out. Don't take 25 everywhere you go. Just be grateful for who you are.
He shares more about his purpose on the field and his secret to finding an open hole in the opposing team's defense.
That story and so much more is coming your way next week. We hope you'll join us. This week, though, we've got just a few moments left in our show and we've got time for a final word. Let's give that to the Skit guys.
You can go back and give each of yourselves a piece of advice. What would you say?
Paul wasn't joking when he said that God will do more than you could ever hope or imagine. So just hold on, I mean, just be faithful and hold on. That you have a God that is going to do more than you can, and where we sit now, is more than we could ever hope or imagine.
Goodness gracious,
yeah. In all of our lives, whether it's our family, our friendship, our ministry,
we when you talk about dreams, dreams have a decision. With that decision, there's always going to be difficulties. There's always going to be delays. There's always going to be dead ends, and we've seen that in so many. But there's deliverance. I mean, there's beauty in dreaming. Dreaming big dreams for God, and so. I hope through our friendship and through the long tail of what we've gotten to do, you see those dreams come to fruition.
Tommy Woodard and Eddie James, thank you so much. That is a great final word for this edition of Studio 5 and for this week's look at uplifting entertainment. Until next time, make time to uplift someone around you, and then please come right back here and see what Studio 5 takes you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching.